All right, we got another user submission here. So right off the bat on this one, I think the first thing that comes to my mind is our spine with this big old crank in it. And so there's some great golfers. I mean, Tommy Fleetwood, probably one of the most notable we can think of, that has this type of shape back. And inherently, there's not too much wrong with it if we still feel that rotation, if it's just more of like our back is stiff. But the problem usually here is it means our rotation is not going to come from the right spot. And so what we see in the start of the backswing is we'll first look at this back leg. And so our angle, we're a little bit outside the ball and obviously we're low. So some of the face angles and whatnot aren't going to be perfect, but for the most part, we're going to see just the effect of if our right leg gets very straight, we kind of post our way back. If we don't really sink into that hip and use those glutes, if we kind of use that leg as more of just like a backstop to rotate against, we have a tendency to lift the club. Um, and there's also a nice little separation that we're going to see where the arms move and the lower body doesn't. There's not a ton wrong with this. There's a great drill that Justin Rose does as an exaggeration to have that feel. But the problem is if we don't have that lower body start the downswing, especially if we're not using the glutes properly in the backswing, we're just going to end up coming over the top. And so we see here for the right hip, we're taking a peek at just how straight this thing gets. And when we get all the way to the top, we're going to start to see kind of the arms work under and trying to shallow the club out. If we had a face-on view, my bet is that our hips are well outside of our foot and kind of, it's hard to see, but there's a little bit of a bow here in the leg. And so if our weight starts to get too far shifted behind us and our club is getting a little bit too, high, or sometimes if it's getting too deep, we're going to end up trying to have to save it. And usually the thing that can save it from a leverage point of view is going to be our right elbow. And so what we see is as the arms start to work underneath us, we get from a pretty decent spot in here with some extension in that left arm. So now we're starting to kind of like bend that left elbow. And so when the club and everything gets really tight to you, we can see how the right elbow and everything kind of sucks in towards the body, is that there's really nothing the club can do because we're shortening it so much. And so sometimes this is why people end up setting up too close to the ball. We kind of have this angle on our spine where, oh, that was terrible, but we have that angle in our spine, is that we're trying to decrease the length of our swing because we're set up too close to the ball simply, or our hands are too far underneath our shoulders. And so we don't see much of that here, but just some normal things that can happen. And so when we get this sucked in, we're starting to see how, all right, from this point, the lower body's starting to work back towards the golf ball. And we start to clear, we actually see some nice rotation. If we're just looking at the hips for the next few frames, we can see how the hips do, a good job rotating and getting, some of that left butt cheek out. But we end up coming back to kind of more of a parallel position and slightly open as we get into impact. And as most of you saw, as the hands come down and through, we're going to see the club face go well over our swing lines. We know our angle isn't great, but we can see at this point we're well too over the top. Our club is, probably slightly closed in relation to where the ankle is at the camera. But the death move has already started. We get this far over the top, and we're going to start having a lot of this, flipping of the hands to try and save it. Everyone that's done this, knows what the shot shape is, but we get this big old banana, really weak thing. Cool little technique for trying to get out of a bunker, but for full swing, not the best.